From the very first moment this clip surfaced, fans couldn't stop talking. A friendship that once seemed unshakable now looks like it's crumbling right in front of the cameras. Yandy sitting across from Spice, letting years of frustration pour out, calling Rasheeda out for betrayal she never saw coming. This is the kind of tea nobody expected to spill so fast. It wasn't just shade. It wasn't just whispers. It was a storm of emotions that left Spice sitting there wide-eyed, unable to believe what she was hearing. How could someone trusted with private pain turn around and let that pain become public chatter? How could a bond built on support twist into accusations and silence? Questions like these are exploding across timelines, blogs, and fan pages tonight. Yandy didn't just speak her truth. She tore the veil off a friendship fans thought was untouchable. And when Spice leaned back, visibly stunned, the room froze. This wasn't just reality TV drama. It was betrayal laid bare, with the world watching. And the fallout? That's only just beginning. The air inside that quiet room was heavy, almost suffocating, as Yandy leaned forward with fire in her eyes. Spice shifted in her chair, trying to process what was being revealed, but the intensity of the moment didn't give her a chance to catch her breath. Yandy's voice cracked just slightly, not from weakness, but from the weight of emotions she had held in for far too long. She spoke about late-night conversations, private tears, and secrets she believed were locked away between friends. Yet somehow, those same secrets had started to echo across podcasts and blogs, stripped of their meaning and twisted into gossip that the whole world was now feeding on. It wasn't just about what was said. It was about who said it. And for Yandy, that betrayal cut deeper than any insult ever could. Spice listened with her mouth slightly open, her usual sharp tongue frozen. For someone who had lived through her own battles in the public eye, she knew what it meant to trust a friend with your vulnerabilities. So to hear Yandy describe the sting of Rasheeda's words, to feel the hurt in every sentence, it was almost too much to take. Spice glanced away for a second, as if hoping the cameras would stop rolling, as if wishing this wasn't happening right here, right now. But the truth was, reality never pauses for anyone. And this truth was now impossible to bury. Yandy's frustration spilled out in waves. She recalled specific times when she had confided in Rasheeda, moments when her own marriage felt shaky, moments when she wasn't sure how to keep pushing forward, moments when she was fighting battles the audience would never see. She trusted Rasheeda with those words, believing the bond of sisterhood was strong enough to hold them. But instead of comfort, she was now facing the sting of betrayal, the realization that those private conversations had been tossed into the streets for everyone to dissect. "I never sat on a podcast and dragged her," Yandy muttered, shaking her head. "Never. And if I ever mentioned her, I kept it cute. I kept it respectful. But she didn't give me the same grace." The bitterness in her tone made Spice shift uncomfortably. It wasn't just anger. It was disappointment. The kind of disappointment that leaves scars deeper than rage. And as Spice sat there, caught in the crossfire, she couldn't help but remember how many friendships had already crumbled under the weight of cameras, gossip, and pride. The industry had a way of pulling people apart, turning allies into enemies and secrets into weapons. But watching it unfold this close, between women she considered sisters, was a different kind of heartbreak. As the night went on, word started spreading. Backstage whispers turned into buzzing chatter. Some claimed they saw Rasheeda slip out quickly after Spice's concert, avoiding any confrontation. Others said Kirk kept urging her to leave before things could explode. Fans online were already piecing clips together, replaying Yandy's words, analyzing every expression Spice made during the sit-down. Comments poured in with people taking sides, some defending Rasheeda, saying she had every right to speak her truth, others blasting her for breaking the code of friendship. The division was sharp, and the louder the noise grew, the more isolated Yandy seemed to feel. In the middle of it all, Spice tried to offer a steady voice. "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding," she said carefully, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. But Yandy wasn't buying it. She leaned back, her arms folded, her voice steady but dripping with hurt. "A misunderstanding doesn't happen when you're on podcasts, when you're sitting in interviews, when you're dropping little hints about someone's husband. That's not a mistake, Spice. That's a choice." The words lingered, heavy and undeniable. Outside of that room, Rasheeda was already hearing whispers of what had gone down. According to people close by, she was furious, insisting that Yandy was blowing everything out of proportion. She told Kirk she wasn't about to let anyone paint her as a villain, not when she had been dealing with her own struggles. But deep down, there was a flicker of guilt, a moment of hesitation when she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had crossed a line she couldn't step back from. Still, pride wouldn't let her admit it. Not yet. Meanwhile, fans were dissecting every layer of the story. Blogs ran headlines about a friendship imploding. Social media accounts pulled old clips of Yandy and Rasheeda laughing together, comparing them to the icy tension now spilling onto screens. One fan tweeted, "It hurts watching this. They were supposed to be sisters. Now it's like strangers throwing knives." Another wrote, "Rasheeda knew better than to air Yandy's business. She was dead wrong." And just like that, the once tight-knit dynamic that had carried through seasons was becoming the centerpiece of public debate. Yandy herself wasn't holding back anymore. She admitted she had stayed quiet for too long, hoping things would smooth over, hoping Rasheeda would realize the damage she was doing. But silence, she said, had only made things worse. "She thought I was gonna sit back and take it," Yandy said with a laugh that held no humor. "But no, not anymore. I'm done protecting people who don't protect me." Her words echoed like a final warning, one that promised more fireworks if Rasheeda didn't face her directly. In the days following that conversation with Spice, the energy around the cast shifted. Every gathering carried tension. Every room seemed to buzz with anticipation. People wanted to see if Yandy and Rasheeda would finally face off, or if Rasheeda would keep dodging until the pressure exploded on its own. Kirk tried to downplay it, brushing it off as just another misunderstanding. But even he knew this was bigger than a few careless words. It was pride, betrayal, and trust unraveling all at once. And when pride meets betrayal, resolution rarely comes easy. What made everything even messier was the mention of Jasmine. When Yandy dropped that bomb, suggesting Rasheeda was closer to Jasmine than anyone realized, Spice nearly choked. Her eyes widened, her jaw clenched, and for a split second, she didn't know what to say. The idea of Rasheeda taking trips and sharing space with someone tied to so much old pain was shocking enough, but hearing it come from Yandy gave it even more weight. Spice questioned it at first. "No way, I don't believe that." But Yandy didn't flinch. She insisted it was real, telling Spice to watch closely, to connect the dots. The possibility alone was enough to shake the entire room. Outside in the real world, fans went into overdrive. Screenshots and old photos resurfaced, fueling speculation. Suddenly, every vacation post, every casual smile in a group photo was under a microscope. People were asking if Rasheeda had been hiding this connection all along, if her loyalty had quietly shifted while pretending to play both sides. The betrayal angle grew even bigger, and with it, the firestorm surrounding her name. Rasheeda, of course, denied it all when whispers reached her, brushing it off as just more lies meant to tear her down. But the more she denied, the more people dug. And the more they dug, the more they questioned why she seemed so eager to dodge Yandy instead of facing her directly. Avoidance only made the rumors louder, and soon the situation was too big to ignore. As Spice sat back replaying the entire night in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was now holding a secret too explosive to keep. She hadn't asked to be in the middle, but somehow the spotlight was now on her too. Everyone wanted to know what she really thought, what she had really seen, and whether she believed Yandy's claims. Spice, who prided herself on loyalty, knew that whatever she said next could either calm the storm or add gasoline to the fire. And in a world built on cameras and confessionals, she also knew that silence was never really an option. Spice knew she had to tread carefully. Being caught in the middle of Yandy and Rasheeda's fallout was like standing on shaky ground that could collapse at any moment. She replayed Yandy's words in her mind, the accusation about Jasmine, the anger, the sense of betrayal. Spice couldn't decide if it was more heartbreaking or more shocking, but one thing was clear. The next morning, the blogs were already buzzing louder than ever. Clips from the night before spread like wildfire. Fan pages were stitching together moments, and hashtags were climbing up the charts. The internet lived for this kind of drama, and now, every move Yandy and Rasheeda made was under the microscope. It wasn't just about the friendship anymore. It was about loyalty, truth, and the messy web of connections that tied them all together. Yandy scrolled through the comments on her phone, her face tight with frustration. Some people were riding with her, applauding her courage to finally speak out. Others accused her of being messy herself, of trying to drag Rasheeda down for clout. But for Yandy, none of that mattered. What mattered was that she felt betrayed, and the world needed to know it. "They can say what they want," she told a close friend, "but I know what I shared with her. I know the promises we made, and I know she broke them." Rasheeda, on the other hand, was doing everything she could to maintain her calm image. She smiled on social media, posted lighthearted captions, and acted like nothing was wrong. But behind closed doors, she was seething. Kirk tried to calm her down, telling her to let it go, but she couldn't ignore the fact that Yandy had basically called her out in front of everyone. "She's trying to paint me as fake," Rasheeda muttered, pacing the room. "After everything I've done to support her, this is what I get. Nah, I'm not letting her have the last word." The tension boiled over when the cast gathered for another event a few days later. The room was filled with music, laughter, and chatter, but beneath it all was the unspoken awareness that Yandy and Rasheeda were both present. Spice arrived first, her outfit turning heads as always, but even her vibrant energy couldn't erase the heaviness in the air. She spotted Yandy across the room, sitting with a small group, her posture tense, her eyes scanning the space like she was preparing for a battle. Not long after, Rasheeda walked in with Kirk by her side, her head held high, her expression unreadable. People immediately noticed the way the energy shifted. Conversations slowed, eyes darted back and forth, and everyone waited for the inevitable moment when the two women would cross paths. Spice found herself holding her breath, wondering if tonight would be the night things finally exploded. She hoped for peace, but deep down, she knew this was reality TV. Peace was never the main event. Yandy made the first move. Standing up, she walked across the room with purpose, her heels clicking against the floor like warning signals. Rasheeda saw her coming but didn't flinch. Instead, she straightened her back and prepared to defend herself. When Yandy reached her, the noise in the room seemed to fade. All eyes were locked on them, waiting for the sparks to fly. "So, this is what we doing now?" Yandy said, her voice calm but sharp. "You really gonna sit on platforms and talk about me? Talk about my husband, after everything I shared with you?" Rasheeda's eyes narrowed. "Don't come at me like I'm out here spreading lies. I said what I said, and if it struck a nerve, maybe you should think about why." The gasps around the room were audible. Spice, standing nearby, pressed her lips together, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment play out. Yandy leaned closer, her voice low but trembling with emotion. "You know what you did. You know the things I told you when I was vulnerable, and you turned them into sound bites. That's not what a friend does." Rasheeda fired back without hesitation. "And what about the times you left me hanging? What about when I was struggling, and you were too busy to pick up the phone? Don't act like this is one-sided. Maybe you should stop pretending you're perfect." The back and forth drew the entire room into silence. The tension was so thick that even Kirk, usually quick to defend Rasheeda, stayed quiet. Spice shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between the two women, knowing that no matter what was said tonight, the friendship was already too damaged to return to what it once was. As the argument continued, someone brought up the name Jasmine again, and that's when the room truly erupted. "Why don't you tell everyone about your little trips?" Yandy snapped, her voice rising. "You think people don't know? You think I don't see the pictures, the connections? You're closer to her than you've ever been to me lately." Rasheeda froze, the accusation cutting deeper than she expected. Spice's jaw dropped, her hand flying to her mouth as she tried to process what she just heard. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire, people leaning in to catch every word. Rasheeda's face hardened, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt, or maybe just frustration at being exposed in such a public way. "Don't twist my friendships into something they're not," Rasheeda hissed, her voice tight. "You don't know everything, and you don't get to tell me who I can or can't be around." But the damage was already done. The seed of suspicion had been planted, not just in Yandy's mind, but in everyone watching. Spice looked at Rasheeda, then at Yandy, torn between disbelief and concern. She wanted to shut it all down, to tell them both to walk away before things went too far. But part of her knew this confrontation was inevitable. Outside the venue, fans who had gotten wind of the scene began speculating. Videos leaked, blurry clips captured from the edges of the room, spreading across the internet like wildfire. "Did y'all see Yandy drag Rasheeda about Jasmine? This is getting messy," one fan tweeted. Another replied, "Spice's face said it all. She was shook." Within hours, the confrontation was trending, with memes, reactions, and theories flooding every platform. Behind closed doors, Spice tried to reach out to both women separately. She called Yandy first, urging her to take a breath and think about whether exposing everything in public was worth it. Yandy's voice softened, but her resolve remained. "I tried to keep it private, Spice, I really did. But she kept poking, kept talking. At some point, you gotta defend yourself." Spice sighed, knowing she couldn't argue with that. When she spoke to Rasheeda later, the energy was completely different. Rasheeda was defensive, her words sharp, her tone unwavering. "She wants to make me the bad guy," Rasheeda insisted. "I didn't betray her. I didn't. But I won't let her make me look weak. If she wants war, fine. Let's go." Spice hung up the phone with a heavy heart, realizing that the feud was only escalating. The cracks in the group were now impossible to ignore. Friends were being forced to choose sides, and every conversation seemed to circle back to the drama between Yandy and Rasheeda. Some people avoided talking about it altogether, afraid of getting dragged into the storm, while others couldn't stop fanning the flames. The atmosphere was electric, unpredictable, and everyone knew the next encounter would be even more explosive than the last. The tension in the room was so heavy that even the quiet hum of the air conditioning seemed too loud. Yandy's voice had cracked when she tried to defend herself, but her words didn't land the way she wanted. Instead, they floated in the air, leaving everyone in silence as if waiting for the next explosion. Kirk leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that felt like he was burning holes through her. Rasheeda shifted uncomfortably, biting her lip, clearly unsure if she should jump in or just let it play out. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every glance, every shaky breath, every flicker of emotion that crossed their faces. Yandy's frustration turned into a slow build of anger, her chest rising and falling with deeper breaths. "You really think I would say that to just hurt you?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. Kirk didn't even blink. He just let the silence answer for him. She shook her head, muttering under her breath. And that's when Mendices finally spoke up. His tone wasn't explosive, but it carried a sharp edge, one that made everyone freeze. "What she said was out of line, but don't act like you don't throw daggers too," he said, turning his gaze toward Kirk. The room immediately shifted. the balance of blame teetering in midair. Kirk's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening, and Rasheeda's hand instinctively went to his arm as if she knew he was about to snap. Yandy glanced at Mendices, both grateful and frustrated that he jumped in, because even though he was trying to level the ground, his words only made the tension hotter. The crew behind the cameras exchanged looks, some whispering under their breath, sensing that they were catching something that could shift the entire narrative of the season. The energy became electric, almost unbearable, until Kirk leaned back in his chair and let out a hollow laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh that carried humor. It was one filled with disbelief, bitterness, and an edge of mockery. So now you want to play mediator? When has she ever been wrong in your eyes? His words cut sharp, and Mendices sat straighter, the muscles in his shoulders tightening. Rasheeda tried to ease the moment, but her voice cracked. Maybe we all just need to take a step back, she suggested, though no one paid her any attention. Yandy shot back at Kirk, her words spilling faster than her thoughts could catch them. You don't know what it's like to always be painted as the villain, to always be the one blamed no matter what I do. You think I wanted this mess? You think I wanted to drag your son's name into this? Her voice broke at the end, and for a moment, her vulnerability pierced through the chaos. But Kirk wasn't moved. He leaned forward again, his voice low but dangerous. You didn't just drag his name, you destroyed it. You planted a stain that'll never wash off. Do you even realize what you've done? His words struck Yandy like a blow, and her face fell, the fight in her eyes dimming for the first time. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mendices reached for her hand under the table, squeezing it in an attempt to ground her. But the cameras zoomed in, catching the gesture as if it were another layer of drama to unfold. Rasheeda finally stood up, her voice louder now, trembling but commanding. Enough. This isn't just about words anymore. It's about the damage those words left behind. And we can't keep pretending like it's going to fix itself. Everyone's attention snapped to her. For so long, Rasheeda had been quiet, trying to balance her loyalty to Kirk with her empathy toward Yandy. But now her frustration boiled over. This show isn't just cameras and storylines. This is our lives, our families, our kids. And once you put something out there, it sticks. Whether it's true or not, it sticks. Her voice cracked again, and she quickly wiped a tear from her cheek, embarrassed to let it show. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yandy turned her face away, her jaw clenched, while Kirk stared at the floor as if the answers might be written there. Mendices leaned back, finally breaking eye contact, his breathing shallow but steady. The entire room felt like it was about to collapse under the weight of unspoken truths and scars that ran too deep to heal with a simple apology. The producer finally called for a cut, but nobody moved. The cameras stopped rolling, yet the tension didn't fade. If anything, it grew heavier without the excuse of performance. Kirk muttered something under his breath and stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Rasheeda followed him quickly, leaving Yandy and Mendices alone with the buzzing silence. Yandy dropped her face into her hands, her shoulders shaking slightly as she tried to hold back tears. Mendices rubbed her back slowly, whispering something only she could hear, though her body language showed it wasn't working. The weight of what just happened lingered, not just as a fight, but as something that would spiral far beyond that room. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, some scribbling notes, others shaking their heads. They all knew this wasn't just another scene. This was the kind of moment that could define careers, reputations, and relationships for years to come. Mendices finally stood, pulling Yandy gently up with him, but she resisted, refusing to leave the room yet. Her tears had dried, but her expression carried a mix of defiance and despair. She looked at the empty chair where Kirk had sat and muttered, almost to herself, "They'll never see me for who I really am. They only see what they want to believe." Her words hung in the air, fragile but powerful, and even without an audience, they carried a weight that refused to disappear. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, and the storm outside that room was only beginning to gather strength. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would come next. Everyone had said too much, done too much, yet somehow it felt like the story wasn't finished. The cameras were still rolling, the light still burning hot, and every eye in the room was darting from face to face, searching for the next move. Tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Yandy's voice trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion, like she had fought too long and carried too many secrets on her shoulders. She whispered words that no one wanted to hear, but everyone knew were true. It was the kind of truth that didn't free anyone, but instead locked them deeper into the chaos they had created. Kirk shifted uncomfortably, his eyes unable to meet anyone else's, as if the weight of everything finally pressed down on him all at once. Rasheeda's breathing grew heavy, her chest rising and falling as though she was bracing herself for a wave she couldn't avoid. And Mendices, who had tried so hard to control the narrative, found himself cornered by his own silence, unable to deny or defend without making things worse. Outside the room, the whispers had already begun to spread. Crew members exchanged glances, pulling out their phones, texting furiously because what they had just witnessed was bigger than the show. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't planned. It was raw, ugly, and real. The kind of thing that travels, like fire in dry grass. Social media would devour this the moment it leaked, and everyone knew it. People online lived for this kind of chaos, waiting to dissect every gesture, every glance, every half-truth that spilled out of someone's mouth. And yet, inside that suffocating room, no one cared about the audience anymore. They weren't performing, they weren't playing characters. This was pain stripped bare, and there was no way to put the masks back on. Tears began to slide down Yandy's face, and though she quickly wiped them away, the vulnerability had already been seen. She wasn't trying to win anymore. She wasn't trying to prove a point. She was simply breaking down under the pressure of holding too much for too long. Rasheeda, who had sworn she wouldn't let herself be pulled deeper, felt her anger dissolve into something softer, though she didn't know if it was sympathy or exhaustion. She reached for her drink, her hand shaking slightly but didn't take a sip. Instead, she stared at Yandy with a mix of pity and resentment, torn between wanting to comfort her and wanting to walk away forever. Mendices finally leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice low and hoarse, almost as if speaking cost him something. He said he never wanted it to get this far, that the arguments, the accusations, the betrayals were supposed to stay private. He confessed he didn't recognize himself anymore, that the man he had become under the spotlight wasn't who he was meant to be. His words cracked in the middle, and for the first time, no one interrupted him. They just listened because even if they didn't believe every word, they felt the heaviness behind them. Kirk let out a long sigh, rubbing his temples, as if trying to erase the entire day from his memory. He muttered that maybe they had all gone too far. Maybe the cameras had captured too much. Maybe they had all lost control of the story they thought they were writing. His tone wasn't defensive. It was weary. The kind of weariness that settles into bones and doesn't leave. Rasheeda looked at him sharply, as if to say it was too late for that kind of realization, but she held her tongue. Outside, the noise grew louder, phones buzzing nonstop with notifications as the first whispers reached the internet. The production team argued in hushed tones about whether to keep filming, whether to step in, whether this was even safe anymore. But they knew the truth. This was gold for ratings, and nothing short of a disaster big enough to shut everything down would stop it. Suddenly, Yandy stood up, her chair screeching against the floor, her hands clenched into fists. Her voice rose, not with anger, but with finality. She said she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep tearing herself apart while strangers feasted on the pieces. She didn't wait for anyone to stop her, didn't care about the cameras, didn't care about contracts. She just walked out, the sound of the door slamming behind her echoing through the room like the end of an era. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Rasheeda blinked hard, holding back tears of her own, though she would never admit it. Mendices sat, frozen, as though the reality of losing her, even in that moment, hit him harder than he expected. Kirk stared at the floor, his lips pressed tight, knowing there were no words that could fix what had just broken. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Finally, Rasheeda spoke, her voice sharp but fragile. She said, maybe the truth was, they weren't fighting each other anymore. They were fighting themselves, trapped in a world that demanded more drama than any human could survive. No one argued with her, because for once she was right. The night stretched on, and though no one said it out loud, everyone knew this moment would never leave. Listen, y'all, after everything that just went down, we want to hear from you. Do you think this drama is going to change everything forever, or will they somehow find a way to fix it all? The tension, the emotions, the betrayals. It's too much to ignore, and you know the fans are going to be divided on this one. Some are already taking sides, while others are completely shocked that it even got this far. So now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you think, and don't hold back because this story is only getting bigger. Make sure you hit that like button if you're just as stunned as we are, and don't forget to subscribe because you don't want to miss the next twist. Trust me, what's coming next will leave everyone speechless, and you'll want to be the first to know.